Today, I'm going to share with you a little bit about multiple offer scenarios. So say you're a new home buyer or you're purchasing a home again and you've been through that situation before. I want to talk about this scenario because it comes up, right? It happens. Sometimes you go in and you want to purchase a home and there's somebody else that wants that home too. Just had this happen last week, and so I wanted to kind of talk about it because this is a very real situation and you might find yourself in that scenario. And what do you do when you're in the situation? So I had some buyers that I was out with last week and we looked at several homes. And finally we walk into one particular house, and you know the feeling if you've been there. They walk in and it's that take your breath away moment, and it immediately, it's the one. Oh my goodness, this fits here and we're putting this there, and it really felt like home to them. And I knew it, they knew it, they felt it, and we talked and imagined everything within that 20-minute showing, and they knew that this is the house they wanted to put a contract in. So we're really excited about this. And as we're leaving, we see another realtor driving up the driveway. And that realtor is bringing their buyers in as well to show this house. And so it's a little like, oh no. And so we found ourselves in a scenario last week where here we are, another set of buyers are interested in putting an offer in on the same home. And so we're in a multiple offer situation. So what do you do? How do I coach my clients and say, hey guys, all right, here we go. You really want this house. We've looked at 10 other homes. You know this one is the one. How do you make your offer stand out? And they're like, what's the question? How do we win? How do we win the house? We want to win, you know? So as their realtor, I want them to win the house, but we have to weigh a lot of details on making a wise decision for them. There's a lot of things in winning the house, right? What that means financially for them. How do we go about this on the contract, and how do we make their contract stand out and above the other one that's coming in? So it takes a lot to get the information that you need from the listing agent, if they'll offer any information, because they're not obligated to. But I ask my buyers a series of questions because I want them to position themselves in the best place possible that they feel comfortable with, so that they're making a wise decision. Okay, so here's some of the questions. They're obviously in love with the house. They want the house, but I have to, help them through this very emotional process to help them make good choices, right? So I ask them, what do you want to offer on the home? There's obviously a list price here, right? Do you want to offer more than that list price? That's one way you can go in at it, right? And if you offer more than that list price, is that home going to appraise for that amount? So that's a question. So I need to know the market. I need to understand what that home is going to appraise for. So that takes some work on my end as their realtor to understand what the market values are for that home and say, can that home possibly appraise for more? Are we going to be in a situation where we've overshot a little bit too much? Because if the home doesn't appraise for that amount, are we going to have to go back to the negotiating table between that buyer and that seller and figure out how that excess is going to get paid for? Because that's what can happen in that situation. So that's a question. Do you want to offer more than that amount? The other question to ask is, are you going to ask that seller for closing costs? Because if you have cash and you're going to pay for your own closing costs or a portion of your closing costs, that might be a little bit sweeter to the seller, obviously. So it might look better for them over the other contract that's coming in if they don't have to pay cash towards your closing costs. So how much cash do you have on hand, and are you willing to not ask for the closing cost concessions? So that's a question. The third thing I'd say is, are you going to ask for other concessions like repairs? Now, I always recommend telling my buyers to get your contract contingent on a home inspection. I never negate and say throw that home inspection out. It's really important for you to understand what's going on with that house. even if you say, I'm not gonna ask for repairs, it is super important to make sure that the house is sound, there's no structural issues, nothing major that needs to be uncovered, and you're not getting stuck there. So that contingency is gonna protect you from that. And it's super important, even if you say, look, I'm not gonna ask sellers to pay for any of those things. I think the house is gonna be in great repair, but just in case, I'm still gonna be contingent. So you can write that offer and say, hey, we're not gonna ask for repairs, but we still want that home inspection. Now, there's other ways to make sure that home inspection is done quickly and efficiently within time frames, but you might not wanna ask for repairs, but I still suggest you get a home inspection. So that's one way you can make your offer look better over the other one. Another question is, now this is taking it to new levels, are you willing to offer what's called an appraisal guarantee? Now, what that means is basically you're saying to the seller, I'm gonna give you X amount of dollars over what that appraised value of the home is. So I'm guaranteeing not just a list price increase, but I'm guaranteeing that I'm gonna give you $5,000 over the appraisal in cash. I'm gonna give you $10,000, whatever that amount is that you wanna give. That's a way that you can maybe have a better offer than the other buyer if you want to. So that's something that you can consider. Another thing that can be done to make your offer stand out over any others is what's called an escalation clause. And some people get those two things confused, appraisal guarantee and an escalation clause. They're different. An escalation clause basically is setting an amount over what the other buyer is offering that you're going to go over. And so you're capping that amount. So it's basically saying, I'm going to go over the other buyer's offer by X dollars, and you can cap that amount. So, and that's the escalation clause. So those are different things, but you're kind of guaranteeing a certain amount in those two things. You can shorten a closing date time frame. Instead of doing like 45 days, 30 days. If you have a lender, you usually need at least 30 days. But basically, you also want to find out what the seller needs. Like, how can we make this good for the seller? So that's a question that I might ask that listing agent, and being flexible on your end to accommodate the seller. So there's a lot of different ways to work a contract to say, hey, you know, we really want to stand out above the other offer. Now, you have to keep those things in perspective to what is important to you for, you know, what you want your monthly mortgage to be, how much cash you have on hand, how much you want to spend overall. These are all things to consider. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that we're working out on paper and working numbers and things like that in your time frames and all that kind of stuff. And I help you with that. So super important. Now, the good news is with my clients last week, we did win the house. So we were really excited about that, and they were super thrilled. And they actually came out of it still getting some of their half of their closing costs paid, but it was like a win-win. So it was a win-win for the seller, it was a win-win for the buyer, and we were able to overcome a multiple offer situation, which was really cool. And I consider that a huge win. So when I got to make that phone call to my buyer and say, guess what, guys, you won. It's such a good feeling, but more so than just like putting in a high bid or whatnot, they won in several different ways, which makes me feel really good as their realtor because they were able to make really wise decisions with their offer, and then also get the house that they're just super excited to be in, that they know is going to be their home that fits all their needs, that checks all the boxes, and it just is it's a good thing. So they're so excited, I'm so excited, and it's cool to see all these things kind of fall into place. So I feel like I have a really cool job. The last question that I ask a buyer when they're in a multiple offer situation, and I share this with people, this little story, because I remember this house that I'm sitting in right now was one of my first transactions as an independent realtor. And I was the agent on it. And so I remember my husband and I, when I was writing this offer on the home, we got into negotiations with the sellers, and they wouldn't pay for a portion. It was like $5,000 of our closing costs. And I was frustrated because I wanted to win that $5,000. We loved this home, and we knew that this was our home. And so I remember talking to my broker and saying, we want this home, but they're not negotiating on this $5,000 in closing costs. And I remember my broker looked at me and said, are you willing to lose the house over $5,000? And I was like, wow, I never thought about it that way. So simple, but I was so emotionally involved because this was my home. And even as the realtor, I was so emotionally involved. So I ask my clients that when they're in multiple offer scenarios, because I know that they're emotionally involved, and I say, hey guys, are you willing to lose the home over X amount of dollars, or over not getting repairs, or over not getting these closing costs paid? Whatever that variable is, are you willing to walk away from it? If you're willing to walk away from it, then no problem. Maybe it's not the house for you. That's cool. But if you're not, and that doesn't matter, but losing the house means more, then maybe you should just take that risk, right? And I'll tell you, I hadn't thought twice about that $5,000 whatsoever, but our home has made so many good memories for us. It has been such a gift for our family. So, that's a last question that I ask my buyers in those types of scenarios. But anyway, looking forward to helping you in those situations if you should find yourself in them. So please let me know, drop a comment, subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. If there's something that you want to know about, something that I can help you with, if you have questions for me, please let me know. I'm happy to talk to you real talk about real estate. And thanks for joining me on The Real Real with the Laura VanHart. Till next time, take care.